Na mô tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Na mô tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. Blessings. In Buddhism, in the hierarchy of wholesome or skillful qualities that we cultivate in the practice, the quality of upekkha, equanimity, sits at the top. So say when you chant or read the Anapanasati Sutta, you'll see that by practicing mindfulness of breathing, you can bring the 4 foundations of mindfulness to completion, and the 7 factors of awakening, or 7 factors of enlightenment to completion. This is a description of the different factors and qualities that arise in the course of the practice as you develop the path, the Eightfold Noble Path for the end of suffering. So it begins with mindfulness, sati, and then Dhamma Vicaya, investigation of Dhamma, which has to be done with mindfulness. And mindfulness is your first taste of this quality of upekkha. So it's helping to, when you're mindful, to keep your mind in the middle, in the center of all the different experiences you're having, so that you can have a more detached awareness and contemplate them. And then virya is persistent effort, and piti is rapture, or the interest that arises quite naturally through the effort we put into the practice. And passaddhi, which is tranquility of body and mind. Samadhi, states of calm, stillness. And upekkha is the 7th factor of awakening, which is often translated as equanimity. Equanimous towards all conditions, all phenomena, physical, mental, comes about together with all these other factors. When all these 7 factors are developed together in the mind can maintain this equanimity, which allows us to see the true nature of phenomena, mental phenomena, thoughts and feelings, mental states, pleasure and pain, physical phenomena, the body and the component parts of the body. The mind can view these things with equanimity when it's perfected or developed. And then we can see the truth of body and mind, or the 5 khandhas, as impermanent. When we begin our practice, we're not yet very equanimous, not very detached, so it's quite hard to see change as change. We just get lost in it. The changes of the body, changes of the mind. It's hard to see suffering and the unsatisfactory side of life, because we don't like to look at that. So whenever we have any painful experience or difficulty, the mind tends to run away from it, reject it, try to get rid of it, avoid it, we get distracted from it. And we don't see the selfless nature of phenomena, because when we're not equanimous, we're with this sense of self. The mind is caught into its biases, which manifest or come up as self. So we like things and we don't like things. This quality of equanimity is being able to look on and observe the way things are, without creating self, without creating suffering, but just knowing and seeing the way things are. So it's put at the top of this list, or the end of the list, because it's the hardest quality to develop. So as monks, if you live in a monastery, then if someone is suffering, often you say something like, they've lost their equanimity. It's just one way of describing the experience of stress and suffering, is the equanimity of the mind is gone. The mind is shaken, it's wavering, it's not still, it's not at ease, it's lost its clarity. And when you lose your equanimity, you lose your clarity. So we do that all the time, don't we? We get caught into our reactions to things. We lose our equanimity. So when we're experiencing a situation we like, you're with a person you like, you're enjoying yourself, good conversation, good food, pleasant things happening, we get lost or attached to that. We lose our equanimity. And that gives rise to one kind of bias in the mind, the bias of greed, attachment, because we like pleasure, and then we seek out more and we want to hold on. And when unpleasant things happen, people say things we don't agree with, don't like, criticize us, do things we don't like, don't agree with, or painful experiences come up, the weather is too hot, too cold, we twist our ankle, trip over something. When things go wrong, we break things, make mistakes, and so on. When we experience unpleasant things, the mind goes to another extreme or another bias of dislike or aversion, and again it loses its equanimity. But when we maintain equanimity with all these other factors developing in the mind, the mindfulness and looking at things as Dhamma rather than just reacting with aversion and pleasure, then we can see the truth of things, and particularly to see through the delusion of self. When the mind is equanimous, we can just know, oh, it's like this. So it's one of our goals in the practice then, is to develop more and more of this equanimity, and that's why mindfulness is so valuable, because it's particularly out of mindfulness and then out of wisdom that depends on mindfulness, that we develop more steadiness of mind and more equanimity. But actually in the beginning of practice, often we develop the quality of equanimity through a more simple process, because in the beginning we're often not that mindful, not that experienced in meditation or the practice. So this is why we do chant and recite some of these verses that the Buddha gave, these teachings. So like just now we chanted the 5 recollections, or objects of frequent recollection. I am of the nature to age, I'm of the nature to sicken, of the nature to die, separation from everything I love and like is assured, and then I'm the owner of my karma, born of my karma, related to my karma, abide supported by my karma, Whatever karma I'll do, good or bad, of that I'll be the heir. These are 5 subjects for frequent recollection, because it gives you an initial taste of equanimity when you're even just thinking of these 5 recollections. And they're very ordinary experiences. If we observe our life, we'll notice it's coming up all the time. We get older every day, and sickness in its broadest sense doesn't just mean catching COVID or some serious illness like cancer or heart disease, but just the disease, as in disease, dis-ease of the body. So aches and pains, feeling hungry and too hot, too cold, feeling tired is also a kind of disease. And then of course there's injury and illness as well. And these are very normal things happening all the time. So the Buddha encouraged us just to reflect. This is just normal for a human being to experience these things. We don't like, we don't want, but it's normal. It happens. And death happens all the time. Every day in the world, hundreds of thousands of people die for different reasons, and occasionally it's someone we know. We are going to die, but before we die, there'll be other people we know, love, through family, friendship, work colleagues, or just people in the news that die. It's just normal. And then we have to separate from everything we love and like. And the ultimate separation is through death. But before we get to the end of our life, we still separate from things all the time. Things, you start a meal and then you finish a meal and you separate from that meal. You meet a friend and have coffee with them or a chat with them, do something with them, and then you separate and go your separate ways. You come to the monastery, listen to a talk, meditate, offer some dana, and then you go home and separate. And on a even micro level, you're separating from thoughts, feelings and emotions all the time, aren't you? You feel good and then that feeling passes, or you separate from that feeling. You feel bad, you feel uncomfortable, unhappy, and then that feeling passes and you separate it from it again. So separation is part of life, it's normal. And then karma, the reflection on karma, also leads to equanimity and the sense of just knowing the way things are and accepting the way things are. So I am the owner of my karma, meaning the actions I've done have consequences which come back to me. Every moment of my life I'm receiving the fruits of my karma. And in the beginning of our practice, we're still using the term self, me, mine, myself, because it's useful. So we say, I make karma. I do things, I say things, I think things. And it's a useful, conventional way to talk. So I am the owner of my karma. And that means other people are not the owner of my karma, they're the owner of their karma. And this is one of the principles of karma, is that you can't swap karma much as you would like to, and sometimes people convince themselves they can. Give their karma, give their bad karma away to someone, or take on someone else's good karma, whatever. You can't do it, because you have a stream of cause and effect, whatever way you want to describe this teaching on karma, that you're having to experience the results of every moment of every day through your life. But in the beginning, we just reflect on this. We just think about it, reflect on it. And the Buddha didn't say just believe it. He said reflect on it, develop insight, understanding into karma. It's something to be put to the test, to be understood through practice and experience. It's not just a theory to be believed in. Because if we just use it like that as a belief, then this is my karma, this is my good karma, this is my bad karma, but we're not really using it to change ourselves, particularly in respect to changing behavior for the better, for improving ourselves and our lives and in developing more happiness and getting beyond suffering. You really need to use karma more deeply than that, just believing in things. We have to look at action, cause and effect. And for many people that's where their actual practice of Buddhism begins, is looking at karma at work in daily life. And to look and observe and see it at work, you need to become more aware. So practice mindfulness and introspection, reflection, to start seeing karma at work and to see whatever I do, I have to receive the results of that. So we have these phrases like everything matters and you can't get away with anything. Something Ajahn Kalyano used to talk about a lot, because before we really penetrated or understood the law of karma and the teaching on karma, we often fool ourselves that we can get away with things, especially when we're young. Because of our lack of experience, we have this sort of vague hope that we can get away with things as long as nobody knows, nobody sees. And Ajahn Kalyano would used to say, but you see what you do, you know what you've done. You experience it mentally because karma begins as a thought, an intention, and already that is changing your mind. It's leaving an impression on your mind. Every intentional action begins with a thought, and that's already slightly affecting your mind in one way or another, good or bad. Of course, there is good and there's bad karma. It's affecting your mind, it's affecting your body, because what's going on in your mind affects your body as well. How you think and what's going on mentally can affect how you feel in your body. Hormone changes, chemical changes, changes in your brain, neural pathways, opening up, closing down, getting neglected, getting developed. Karma is affecting us immediately from our thoughts and our intentions. Then of course, over time it's coming out in our speech and our actions as well. It becomes more concrete. So intentional karma with the body is, tends to be the most obvious, concrete karma we make, good and bad. But still, it's a subtle thing. You need to reflect on what you're doing, what you're thinking, what you're saying, what you're doing, in order to see karma at work, cause and effect. But the idea is that by reflecting like this and just thinking about it to yourself, going over it, reviewing your karma, what you've done and said, the idea is it brings you this initial experience of equanimity. So when you're receiving the results of your karma, good and bad, if you're mindful and reflecting on karma as something that is true, that is affecting you, then it brings you this acceptance of this is the result of that. I did this, and therefore the result comes. I did that, I said this, I said that, or even just our thoughts are bringing the results back to us. And the more you see this, the more it brings a sense of equanimity, accepting that's the way things are. And this helps, particularly in the beginning with dealing with the results of past unskillful action that comes back to us, that are unpleasant, because it takes equanimity to be able to accept that when we made mistakes, we've done things that are harmful to ourselves, to others, bigger or smaller, and then we have to accept the consequences. But if you have equanimity, as you're accepting the consequences and experiencing the consequences, then there's the maximum chance of not making fresh bad karma out of those consequences. Because of course karma is a kind of chain of cause and effect. A lot of karma is habitual. You do something once, which reinforces the tendency to do it again, which is a good reason to make good karma, because good karma done once can be a cause for you to do it again and again, and you get better at it. But sometimes when we're deluded and not seeing things, we make bad karma, and then that leads to the habitual tendency to do or say or think in that way, and it gets easier to make bad karma as well. So we're learning, using the teaching on karma to learn and try to maintain equanimity as we're receiving the fruits of our karma, so that we can then make good, wise choices as we go on in life. And sometimes even good karma can be initially good in its result, and you have some pleasure arise, some success, some good thing happens, but then if we're not careful, it can trigger attachment or complacency. It's probably a very common one, isn't it? When things are going well, we get complacent. We've got our job, we're earning our money, we're getting on well in our family or with friends, things seem to be going well. As people sometimes say when they come to the monastery, I say, "How is it going?" They go, "Everything is fine." Which is great, and that's the result of good karma practiced in one way or another. But the danger is of complacency or attachment slipping in. So even experiencing the results of good karma, we have to maintain equanimity, and with equanimity we become more careful, more heedful, and we don't just blindly attach to the good and the success that we have, because that can make us heedless. So reflecting on karma and the results of karma tends to bring with it equanimity, but it also brings a sense of caution and care in our actions, because we become more and more aware that our actions come back on us. Many people, when they begin the practice of meditation, this is the first thing they're learning. It's just they're seeing what they've done, because it comes up in their mind as memories, as visual images, as emotions, thoughts. And as we become a little bit more mindful and aware, then we see some of the karmic trains of, I've done this and then I'm remembering it and I feel good about it, or I've done this and I feel bad about it. And I say things and I do things, and I can see what it, vaguely or sometimes with great clarity, what the results of our actions are. So the practice of mindfulness and meditation and recollecting these kind of teachings is in itself one of the best kinds of karma, because you're really looking at experience and learning from it and developing equanimity, which is an essential part of the practice. One of the things you probably notice as you begin meditation is that your thoughts are lying to you, tricking you, deceiving you. You get it wrong half the time. Our thoughts are out of line with the truth. Sometimes they're crazy, weird, strange. Sometimes they're strong, kind of intense emotional reactions to things. And sometimes totally over the top. Or sometimes just very dull and unaware. when we should be more aware. The whole range you'll start to see in your mind. And this is the fruits of karma that we're looking at. And if you use the teaching on karma, it can help you to give you better perspective and particularly make you cautious. One of the results of reflecting on karma and the fruits of karma, or action and the results of action, is development of these qualities we call hiri ottappa. Shame and awareness and a fear of the consequences of wrongdoing. Because you recognize more and more as you reflect on karma and as your mind becomes a little bit more balanced, more equanimous, you see that, following negative emotions rooted in selfishness, anger, fear, worry, or just basic delusion, this is karma that keeps ripening in your mind, that unsettles your mind, doesn't make your mind feel good, experience peace, but agitates the mind. And it can lead you to say and do things. These kind of negative intentions lead on to making more karma, which comes back to you again, and it's a cycle, isn't it? As you practice mindfulness, you become more aware of this, so then you become more careful and cautious, quite naturally. And people who practice meditation regularly and are investigating karma and developing a little bit more clarity, equanimity in their mind, they tend to experience all kinds of changes in their life. A very common one for people when they begin meditating is, they previously maybe quite normal for them to drink alcohol, take drugs, and then as they practice meditation, their attitude towards those things changes. So quite regularly people come and ask me how to give up drink and drugs, because they're now having contemplated karma a bit, become more mindful, more aware of cause and effect in their life. They can see, this can bring a lot of suffering. Intoxicants take away your equanimity. Your mind is easily swayed by negative emotions, greed, anger, fear, lust, aggression. And we can say and do things that really hurt ourselves, hurt others. Affects our physical well-being, our mental well-being. So that's quite a common one. People then say, well, I can now see the karma of this, I want to change. But that doesn't just mean making the intention to give up drinking, say. It actually needs quite a lot of structural change to a lifestyle, because maybe many of our friends, people we associate with, drink. It's quite normal for them, and they haven't necessarily had the same insights as us. So you go to work, people take you out for a drink or want to take you out, or you go to a social event and people want you to drink. You have to really put that insight into the karma of, say, drinking into practice then, and make your mind firm to say, I'm going to give up the intention to drink, which means you have to say no. And you have to get comfortable saying no. Because socially that can be uncomfortable, because no one else is looking at it in the same way as you, perhaps. But that's why investigating karma, particularly meditating, developing an insight into karma, developing the equanimity that comes from karma, is you're willing to make changes that are for your benefit and for the benefit of others. So you could say, well, you decide to give up drinking and other people are not happy with you, they criticize you or want to push you into drinking again because you've done it before. That's the karma of having drunk before. You have to deal with that, but then you make your lifestyle change and you say, no, I'm not going to drink, and you learn to say no. And after a while that becomes your fresh new karma, doesn't it? Having seen the harm of previously drinking and deciding to give up, you now have to go with the karmic consequences of having previously drunk, so people expect you to carry on drinking, but you say no. They may be annoyed or irritated. You have to put up with that. It's another part of the karma, but you're now developing good karma, which is where you may get your strength, your motivation from, until it's established, and then everyone knows, oh, you don't drink. So they stop asking you to drink alcohol, or they just offer you other drinks, or you take other drinks, non-alcoholic drinks, and it just becomes established behavior. Maybe even means sometimes over time you change some of your friends. I lost a lot of friends because I stopped drinking. But then maybe you make new friends, because the good karma of giving up drinking brings good results as well, that you can't always predict or imagine ahead of time. But you'll associate more with people who don't drink, if that's the way you've chosen. And it doesn't mean to say you disparage, dislike, look down on people who still drink, and they may be family or friends, but you may incline or gradually move towards people or associate with people who don't drink, because it's more convenient and it supports your new karma. It's part of the new karma. I'm owner of my karma, I'm related to my karma, I abide supported by my karma. So just in that one thing, say giving up alcohol and becoming somebody who doesn't drink, it will gradually affect many aspects of your life. So you'll abide supported by that new karma. And once it's established, it just becomes part of you, because karma is constantly bringing its results. You probably find you get better health, got more money in your pocket, you don't say or do things that you regret because you're drunk, and maybe you associate with people who tend to be people who are more clear-minded, restrained, disciplined, and so on. It may bring all kinds of benefits. And then you multiply that by many other kinds of wholesome karma that you develop, and abandoning unwholesome karma. So that's why the Buddha encouraged us to keep precepts. And people often think this is just some sort of simple thing you just recite and that's the end of it. But these are training guidelines, training your intention to refrain or give up killing, hurting people or animals, insects, to refrain from stealing, taking what is not given. So that includes not just robbing banks, but not fiddling your taxes, all kinds of areas of life you change by keeping that precept. Give up sexual misconduct, so it becomes normal just to honour, be faithful to your partner, and even if desires come up, looking at other people, you don't act on them. The fourth precept, you refrain from the intention to lie, deceive, abuse others, use harsh speech, divisive speech. And then the intention to refrain from alcohol. And these are life-changing guidelines. And it might take time to implement them, because if you're not used to them, your previous karma is you steal, you kill, you're not faithful to your partner, you lie, you whatever. They all take time to establish fresh new intentions. So one thing is you have to put up with the old karma when the old intentions arise. You have to have your equanimity towards them. There's that desire to lie coming up again, but this time you don't act on it, you don't say it. You're equanimous at that moment. But you're also aware if you've told a lie in the past, it may come back on you, and you have to accept that. You need equanimity there. But now you have the freedom, once you've stopped lying, for example, you now have the freedom of non-regret. You don't feel uncomfortable with what you said. You've got this sense of shame. So that's guiding you. You've got the fear of the consequences of lying, so you now have those qualities of wisdom and clarity established. And then you just put up with whatever previous karma you've done, the consequences of that. And sometimes we've been burnt and we've learned lessons, but now you're changing the whole course of your thinking and your way of acting in life by keeping that precept. The most extreme cases like the monk Angulimala, who had previously killed many people, but then gave up once he followed the Buddha, became an arahant, but he accepted with equanimity that people still didn't like him based on their memory of him in the past. They were critical of him, rude to him, insulted him, threw stones at him, but he maintained his equanimity, understanding this is the fruits of past karma. And once he had changed, he just made good karma. No more bad karma was made. And that process of changing bad karma into good karma, it takes time, effort, equanimity towards the results of our past actions, mistakes that have been made, failures, people who have been hurt, pain that's been inflicted. It may come back to us. Sometimes it comes back to us. People criticize us. We find obstacles in the things we're doing. Things don't go smoothly. There's obstacles and problems. But all the time, because of your reflection on karma and the equanimity you're developing, your mind is more free to act in a skillful way. And these qualities of hiriyottapa also come up more often and they're more present in your mind, so they protect you from making more bad karma. You have enough strength of mind, say, to say no to a particularly unwholesome intention to hurt somebody or something through speech or action. The hardest level is just on the level of the mind, isn't it? Thoughts, not to believe every thought, every mental state, but to have enough equanimity, mindfulness to stop and reflect and question what you're thinking. Because half the time we get it wrong, don't we? We believe a thought is true when it's not. We believe an opinion, a view is true when it may not be. And quite often we're not cautious, we're not careful. So you believe something and already you may increase your own delusion and wrong thinking, and it may lead on to you making some bad karma. And you see that particularly when we think of other people, often we only think of one part of that person, one aspect of that person. You'll notice in your mind, especially when you meditate, you think of someone and you'll just pick up on one thing about them, and that becomes who they are. So if they've said something or done something you don't agree with, or they hurt you in some way, then that may be the first thing you think of when you think of that person. But you may be totally misjudging them, because it's just a thought, and it may be quite a biased thought. Through karma, you've just picked on one aspect of your memory and about them and their behavior, and you're ignoring so much else. But if you believe that your own opinion, your thought in that moment, well, that becomes karma, and then you might start relating with bias towards that person based on that thought that you've picked up. You could call it a kind of self-brainwashing, where you convinced yourself someone is bad, or they're bad in some way, or they're lazy, they're wrong, they're arrogant, they're selfish, they're all the negativity that we can have towards somebody. We can pick on that quality, the negative quality of that person, and just believe it, fix it in our mind. It becomes what we call a fixed view. If we're not careful, we just believe it, and that's karma, both delusion, and maybe it leads to aversion, or jealousy, or fear, because we haven't been sharp enough to see the mental karma we're making by jumping onto a particular opinion or view and not considering it well enough, long enough, not giving ourselves time to adjust, understand something better. Often we jump to conclusions. We rush in and just believe a thought and that's it. If we don't question it or consider it more than that, that becomes what we believe. It can be about ourselves. So it's another kind of karma, isn't it? Self-criticism, our self-view that I'm hopeless, I'm bad because I made a mistake. When, at that moment when you attach to that view, you're ignoring all the successes and the good things you've done, of course. The things that were not mistakes fade, disappear from your perception and your understanding at that time because you just attached mentally to that one view of yourself, maybe based on one mistake or maybe a few mistakes lumped together, but still there'll be many other good things and other bits of information about yourself you're totally ignoring at that time. So it can become a heavy karma. You become very annoyed with yourself, angry with yourself, depressed, unhappy with yourself. Even though you're only picking on one memory or one event, one bit of information, but because you invest a lot of attachment to it, give it a lot of importance, it becomes a kind of mental karma. Then every time that karma comes up in your mind, you keep thinking in that way, and if you get in the habit of not questioning it, not observing, not looking at it more deeply, that's it. It just sits in your mind over and over again, it comes up. So you might become quite depressed thinking about yourself. Or it could be the same about someone else. It's like that story they keep telling me about the mother with the daughter with 2 apples. And the mum says, "Oh, can I have an apple?" And the daughter responds by biting one apple and then biting another apple. And the mum is disappointed because she says, "Oh, I asked my daughter for an apple, I've given so much to my daughter, and I've taught her to be kind and generous, and there I ask her for an apple and she just eats both of them." She just took one bite out of each of them. So her first thought was, my daughter, why is she so selfish? Why is she so uncaring? And then the daughter says, "Mum, this apple tastes much better than that, so you have this one." She was just tasting it for her mum out of love. So mum feels terrible because she's misjudged her daughter. Thought that she was just being selfish, but actually she was being as kind as you can be, checking which is the best thing before she gives to her mum. That goes on all the time in our mind. The kind of subtle karma that we just miss all the time, get caught out, where we just jump to a conclusion about something and believe it. And that becomes what we think, what we believe. It can be about a person or a place or a situation, ourselves, the future, the past. And we're doing this all the time, and this is like mental karma that is constantly tripping us up and giving us grief, suffering. And when it's really strong, then it comes out in the way we behave. So in that situation, the mother was really disappointed with her daughter. So she said, "Oh, daughter, why are you like this? I didn't bring you up to be like this." But then the daughter explains what she's doing. So the speech was even heavier karma than just the thought. Sometimes it goes into action, doesn't it? We follow a thought and we judge someone and then we act out of greed or anger, delusion, and make the heaviest karma. You maybe really hurt someone. So this is why the Buddha taught us to reflect on the karma that we make every day, because it's constantly coming back to us. We don't get away with anything. And it's where we can really learn quickly, but we need to develop this equanimity, this sense of I'm the product of my karma. I'm the owner of my karma. I have to accept that, I have to take responsibility for that, good and bad. And then I have to act accordingly. So when the bad karma comes up, gives its fruit, I have to be very patient, equanimous with that, but learn and change. And the good karma, I shouldn't be getting too lost in that, because that can also be a problem. When good things happen, the pleasure we take in them becomes an attachment if we're not careful. If we're not equanimous, we attach to success, praise, money, wealth, good feelings, good experiences. That also becomes a problem when we attach without mindfulness. So sort of the most fundamental dynamic of meditation is you're observing how pleasure becomes the cause for attachment, desire, you want it, you're attracted to it. Pain also becomes the basis for attachment. You don't want it, you want to get rid of it. And then delusion is not seeing that process, not seeing the attachment that forms around pleasure, not seeing the attachment that forms around pain. So when there's delusion, we just become the person who likes pleasure, or that particular pleasure, or the person who rejects and wants to get rid of that pain. That's delusion. We lose our equanimity, our mind is shaken, so we move towards pleasure and away from pain, sometimes in very small movements. So you just get a little pain in your leg and you go, ouch, I don't want this. Or sometimes it's very strong movements, you run away. Sometimes people come and they meditate for a while and then they're really not enjoying it and they just get up and run out of the hall. We've had that before. But that's delusion, where you become a self who is caught into pleasure or pain, and then you act accordingly, physically or just mentally. Most of the karma is just mental, isn't it? Mentally moving towards pleasure, seeking it, mentally moving away from pain. But we lose our equanimity. And this is karma. If we don't see it at work, and then we're just getting caught into it all the time. One of the things you learn as a monk is that you can always change, you can always improve on a situation, improve on the karma you're making, you can always learn a lesson, you can always change the direction. So you learn, like we have one rule: if you're a Buddhist monk and you steal something of value, you're no longer a monk. You commit an offence. It's called Peragica, and it's means defeat. You're defeated as a monk. You can no longer be a monk if you've stolen. Whether anyone knows or not, you know, you steal something of value, you can no longer be a Buddhist monk. But as you study that rule and you recollect it, think about it, the Buddha said you notice that, if you were to steal something with the mind of a thief, there's always prior moments leading up to the actual act of, say, stealing, if you were to steal. And that's the same for a layperson. You just don't have the same rules of discipline as a monk. But if you say you were going to steal something, there's going to be moments where you have the thought, oh, if I steal that, it'll be good. I'll get something free, get something easily, don't have to work for it, don't have to do anything, I just get it and then I can enjoy it, say. So you have your pre-karma, that's the initial karma, isn't it? The thought, if I steal this, I'll make it mine, I'll be happy, that'll be good. And then you may have many moments of preparation, preparing the deed. It may be something very ordinary. I'm going to steal the piece of cake from the fridge. Nothing too dramatic. You're not robbing a bank, maybe, but you're just stealing something, a piece of food from a fridge. So you'll notice if you become mindful, there's mental moments leading up to the act, aren't there? There's the thought, oh, where is it? Oh, it's down there. When's the best time to go? When no one's around. You're planning it, you're thinking it through. This is all karma, negative karma based on greed, based on attachment and delusion, not seeing the harm of what you're doing and what you're planning. So you learn this as you learn the monk's discipline. You learn that there are all these individual separate moments leading up to the act, and they're all karma, they're all negative karma. It's not just the final result itself, but the moments leading up are already part of the whole thing. And life is like that, isn't it? A lot of the karma we make has individual moments, good and bad, leading up to the result, the final act and the final result. But say in the case of stealing, you sort of notice that the Buddha said every step you're breaking your rules. So if it was a fridge, every step towards the fridge, you're already breaking a rule. You may not have reached the fridge, but you're already breaking a rule. But maybe halfway you get a conscience arises. You feel guilty, you feel bad, and you go, oh, what am I doing? I shouldn't do this. So maybe halfway you stop, you turn around and you walk away. So you don't make the full karma of stealing. You had the thought, the intention, but you don't act on it. You now have hiriotapa, shame arises. You say, oh, I can't do that. That would be wrong. I'm a monk. I can't steal. It's not appropriate. Or as a layperson, same. I can't do that. It's wrong, bad. So you have a change of heart, a change of karma, and that's the arising of good karma, having become aware of the bad karma you were making. And we do that all the time, no? We have an awareness that a course of action we're planning, thinking to say something, do something. Before we actually do it, we have an awareness arise. This is not going to be good. It won't have a good outcome. Maybe I should reconsider and stop, change. Maybe it's to have a drink. Oh, I'm going to have a drink. No, I don't want to. You haven't had it yet, you just had the thought, and you say no. So each moment, mental moment, or each step, if it's a physical action, there's an opportunity to change. Change course, change the course of your karma, change the course of your life. In the case of stealing, it could be like that. Sometimes people just get overwhelmed by their greed, and they're making all these moments and preparations and steps towards a final act, and they do something, they fiddle the accounts, fiddle their taxes, take something that's not theirs, and then sooner or later they're caught and their whole life changes, doesn't it? I had this when I was a teenager. My dad bought a gun and gave me permission to shoot rabbits to protect the veggie patch. I went out and rabbits were a bit fast for me, so luckily I wasn't able to get them, but there was a bird came and it was just sitting there waiting to eat something, and I shot at it, and then I thought, what am I doing? I didn't like the feeling that came up trying to kill a bird, and luckily I missed. And the bird was just looking at me. I don't know why it didn't fly away. It just looked at me. And I shot again, and I missed again. I think I shot 3 times, and I didn't get it, and then it flew away. And I was so happy afterwards. I thought, oh, so glad that I didn't hit that bird and it flew away. And then after that, I just thought, I can't do this anymore. I didn't want to shoot things. It didn't feel good. Life is like this. You may be fuming and you want to go and really hurt someone with your speech, give them a real talking to. But perhaps you haven't done it yet, so you think it through, and maybe you're just strong enough to say, no, I'm not going to do this, I'll wait, or I'll wait until I've calmed down and then think what to say. You may have to deal with your own anger or your own greed or whatever the emotion is that's come up, and that's where you need the equanimity. But if you've previously made mistakes or seen the results of what you've done in the past, then this is the time to get that clarity and say, no, I'm going to stop this course of action. And you literally unwind. Instead of moving towards that act of karma, you move away from it. And that's good karma, but it's now moving in a different direction. You change the course of your life, you change your mind. Because of the presence of mindfulness, sense of conscience, and awareness of good and bad, right and wrong, and the results of that, and then you stop, or you change. And this is how you literally change your life through the practice. You change your world because you're changing your inner world. You're making fresh decisions based on understanding, mindfulness, clarity. As you change your inner world, your outer world improves as well, and then you get all the fruits of good karma coming back. Once just the intention not to kill or not to steal is such a powerful good intention. It will have a knock-on effect that intention will repeat itself. It will come up over and over again in different situations where you're tempted to kill or steal. You can see those mental states are impermanent, so you can let go of them. They're not really part of who you are, they're just a particular delusion you got caught into, and you can see that. So then you change and you give up, and then they don't come up so often. And whatever previous negative karma you've done, well, you have the equanimity you have to just put up with what mistakes you've made, the memories, all the external situations that come up based on previous karma that comes back to you. But if you keep reflecting on this, reflecting on karma, establishing mindfulness, it gets easier, doesn't it? And you get quicker at letting go of the wrong course of action or questioning your own thoughts and intentions rather than just following them immediately without any kind of restraint or awareness. You change. You don't just believe every thought, every opinion. You question, you think about it, and maybe you decide it's all wrong and just chuck it out of your mind. You get stronger and it gets easier because you've done it once, you can do it again, and then eventually maybe those negative intentions, the intention to make what you call bad karma, doesn't arise anymore because you just know this is not the way. And people change like that for the better. And they know why they're changing because they can see the happiness of a mind that is free from regret, free from guilt, free from self-criticism, remorse. Other people also won't criticize you. If you're not making bad karma, you're generally not creating the causes for others to hurt you or harm you or criticize you. Life improves. And nothing is fixed. You may have a store of bad karma that you have no choice, you have to just accept it's coming back to you. Because we're the heir of our karmas. We own our karma and you can't get rid of it, and no one else can do that for you. No one else can take it on for you. You have to accept what you've said and done. But if you're developing the more skillful qualities of mindfulness and restraint and wisdom and understanding, then you can deal with your old karma. You just accept, it's just old karma. You don't make a big deal out of it in your mind. You don't worry about it. You don't fret about it. Give it too much importance. You just patiently accept it with equanimity. And then you get beyond it. So this quality of equanimity means keeping the mind in the center towards the different changing conditions, physical conditions, mental conditions. It's the mind that is still, unwavering. And the more you reflect on karma particularly, the more this quality will come up. Of course, you deepen it by developing meditation, insight, of course, but in the beginning, just reflecting on karma brings equanimity. It's probably your first taste of equanimity as you practice on this path of Buddhism. So maybe I'll leave you with these reflections tonight, and in a moment we'll pay respects to the Triple Gem.